Hello everyone, I am Chimkin. This is LEGO Harry Potter years 5 through 7. We're going to be doing a run of all Hogwarts and Peril no cutscenes of this game. And so without further ado, we'll get right into it. We'll start ahead in 3, 2, 1, go. So this is a no cutscene run, so we're going to be able to skip all the cutscenes. You'll see right off the bat we had a cutscene. We're going to go ahead and skip that one. LEGO Harry Potter years 5 through 7 is one of my personal favorite LEGO speedruns. It's a pretty cool game. It has a lot of pretty broken tech in it, and has pretty large sequence breaks that you can do. But this first level, since we haven't unlocked any of our abilities yet, is pretty vanilla. So we're mostly just going to try and beat the level as quickly as possible. But one thing we do need to pay attention to in this first level is studs. There is a spell that we buy about 10 minutes into the run called Glacius, and it costs 110,000 studs. So we're going to use the time in this first level to try and get as many studs as possible. Hopefully we'll have a little over 90,000 by the end of this run, or this level. And if so, we'll have no problem hitting that stud count. But the reason we want to get that spell is because Glacius is the freeze spell. Basically, you can shoot it at NPCs or your player 2, and it freezes them in a block of ice. And the unfreeze animation is the character just kind of shakes around when they're unfreezing, and the shaking is pretty violent when you have VSync off. And as a result, during the unfreezing period, if you position your characters correctly, you can actually flip through walls while unfreezing. And while that is super broken in its own right, just being able to skip things normally, it also allows us to sequence break in the run. And before I get into that, another piece of tech in this game is camera pan skips. Basically, when a camera pan starts like that, if you drop in a player, it skips them. And that's a pretty broken piece of tech, and we're going to use it all over the place in the run, but it's not super flashy, and it's pretty easy. But it's used all over the place. I'm going to do another one right here. So whenever I drop out and drop back in, that's what I'm doing. I'm just skipping a cutscene, which saves all sorts of time throughout the run. And I'm going to try and get some studs with player 2 here while player 1 does the actual story, or progresses the level. So what exactly is a student in peril? Not everyone here probably has played this game, so I'm going to explain that. A student in peril is a collectible in this game that is basically just a Hogwarts student that's just in danger. And there's 38 of them in the hub, or in Hogwarts, in this game. And so this category, we're not going to worry about the ones that are in the actual levels, we're only interested in the ones that are in the hub. Hence the name All Hogwarts Student in Peril. Because we're not worried about the ones in the levels, we don't actually have to play all the levels to complete the goal of the category. So we're not going to do that. On the topic of levels in this game, you can actually skip levels. Basically, the way the hub works in this game, there are a number of triggers that exist that take you from door to door, room to room. And if you use Glacius, the free spell we were talking about, to flip into a room earlier than intended, you can sometimes be warped to a different year than the one you're supposed to be in. Basically, the way that works is in the game code, each room has a different file depending on the year that you're in, but rooms that aren't supposed to be accessed in like year 5 or year 6 don't have like a year 5 or year 6 file. So if you clip into a room in year 5 and that room doesn't have a corresponding year 5 file, the game kind of gets confused and throws you into a different year. And since in this game each individual year has its own story progression, you can essentially skip whatever you haven't done in previous years by jumping to future years. So let's say we hit a lesson in year 6 from year 5. and it's not a lesson that we're supposed to, or a room we're supposed to be able to access in year 5. That will sometimes take us to year 6 and skip whatever we haven't done yet in year 5, which is super broken. And there's probably a good dozen of doors like this throughout the room, or throughout the run. We call doors that exist like that enter room early triggers. They're basically a room that exists in the hub that you're not supposed to be able to access yet, that allows you to jump forward in time. And on the topic of students in peril, we're going to get our first one in the hub here. One up top on a spider web, so we're going to get a jump shot up at him, rescue him. So that's our first student in peril down. That was the first level we played, and after we beat it, we're now in the actual hub. So we still don't have our abilities yet. We need to play the first lesson before we unlock abilities and the ability to purchase Glacius. So as of right now, we're actually not able to buy the spell, so we have to just play through the normal story. But after we get Glacius, we open up a lot of options with being able to do different things with the route. We're actually going to get one more student in peril here. Maybe. I might not hit him in time. Okay, we did get him. That one sometimes, because there's a lot of objects in the way, sometimes it doesn't actually hit him in time if you target too many objects. But we did get him there. So I was talking about the enter room early triggers as one way of warping from year to year. One of the caveats of enter room early triggers is that you can only use it to warp forward in time. So if a room doesn't exist in year 5, but let's say it exists in year 6, you can use that room's trigger to go from year 5 to year 6. But once you're in year 6, that trigger will just behave as normal. So you won't be able to use that to travel backwards in time, which is sometimes useful. However, there are some triggers, like this one that we're about to hit right here, that are called event triggers. So this trigger sends you to the Grand Hall cutscene, basically right there, which teleports you across the map here. And it's part of the intended story of year 5. So that event trigger there plays a cutscene, but the triggers for levels, or for lessons, or any other cutscene trigger in the hub like that that's part of the main story, all of those are event triggers. So the way that event triggers work is when you hit them, they check the flag to see what year you're in, and if you're not in the correct year for that event trigger, it'll just send you to the correct year. So if I warped to year 6 and then went and hit that cutscene trigger that I just hit there, it would take me right back to year 5. Oh wait, I wasn't supposed to drop out there. That was my bad. So you can use event triggers to go backwards in time. And the thing about triggers like that is they're supposed to disappear over time, but like that specific trigger that I just hit there, that one doesn't disappear until you re-enter that room in year 5. So if the next time I enter that room it's in year 6, it'll take me right back to year 5, which is pretty useful because that gives us the ability to do later episodes to get abilities that we're not supposed to have access to, and then use them in earlier episodes, which can save us some time in places. You'll see I have plenty of studs. I only need 110,000, and this is the point where I want to have that money, so we're going to go buy Glacius here in a second. So far, we have gotten 3 students in peril. That was the third one we just got there. And this is where the route really starts to open up. So hopefully I've explained the year warping a decent bit. If not, you're going to see in a second what year warping looks like, because we're actually going to go and warp years pretty soon here. But first we have to go buy Glacius, which is back in Diagon Alley. Like I said, this was actually not available to purchase originally, and we're going to get the student in peril in this room while we're here. And one interesting thing about this game is you can actually interact with like shop menus while the student in Peril is playing, so we're going to do that a couple times as well, since that overlaps the shop menuing with playing the game as intended. Alright, so now right now we're in the normal path of year 5. So we've done the first level and the first lesson, and now we're going on to lesson 2 here. That's what we're supposed to do anyway. But we are going to do a little bit of sequence breaking. You'll see I'm skipping a whole bunch of cutscenes, because pretty much all these cutscenes are just normal camera pans. Many student in Perils have camera pans associated with them, and just a lot of normal events that happen also have camera pans associated with them. So I'm going to give this spoon to this student here, and now we're going to do a little bit of freeze clipping. But first I'm going to open up this door, if I could stop targeting the student there. Since we're going to need to go out there a number of times in the run, we don't want to have to clip every single time. So that's a freeze clip. Basically what I did there is I shot Hermione, and while Hermione was about to be shot, I switched her to Lumos. So she pulled out Lumos, and switching on to Lumos locks you in the unfreezing animation permanently. You can basically use that to vibrate next to walls and get into rooms. So now we're in a section of the hub we're now supposed to access until almost the end of year 5. So this lesson is actually able to be done early. This is the part of the movie where the Weasley brothers basically get expelled for messing around with Umbridge. And there is an ability we get from this that's pretty useful, so we're going to do this now. First, I'm going to get another student in Peril up here, using a little bit of parkour. And that also skips a strength potion earlier in this room. So on for the rest of this room, we'll get a rocket here. Oops. And that'll blow up a barrier over here. We'll skip that cutscene. So while we're doing this, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the route for this. So I mentioned that we're able to jump back and forth between years, but I haven't really talked about why that's useful. So there's a bunch of spells you learn throughout the game. You'll see my spell wheel right now. I have a purple one, which is just the default Wingardium Leviosa, and also has Glacius on it. A green one is like a pet or an ability, like the Invisibility Cloak or Crookshanks, something like that. And the white one is Lumos. So we've already talked about Lumos. It's used to get rid of vines, and it can also be used to cancel animations, which is how it's useful for freeze clipping, like I've done a couple times so far. But there's 8 spells in total on the wheel, and a number of them are pretty useful as abilities. So in year 5, there's the spell Defindo, which allows you to cut into red bricks on walls, which you otherwise aren't able to cut into. In year 6, there is Reducto, which allows you to blow up metal objects. And there's also Aguamente, which allows you to shoot water and fill up objects. Those are all the spells that we are going to get for this, since there are students in Peril that require each of those abilities. There's also a few other abilities that we want, mainly Dark Magic, which requires a character that knows the dark arts, but it also requires you to beat year 7, because for some reason, even if you purchase a Dark Magic character, they can't use Dark Magic or interact with Dark Magic objects until you've beaten year 7 in its entirety. So there's 4 students in the hub that require Dark Magic. We're going to need to play all of year 7 in order to get that. But first, we have to complete certain parts of the story, even if we don't need the ability. So this is Thestrals, which is a pair of magical creatures lesson from Order of the Phoenix. Thestrals' ability is used like one time in the whole game. It's not really all that important. But it is part of the main plot or storyline of this first episode, so we do need to do it in order to get past this and get to the spells that we actually need. Which is the main reason why we're doing it. Because, although we can get from episode to episode out of order, we can't really play, the segments of the episode out of order, for the most part. I know we did just do Weasley boxes early, which is one of the exceptions. There's like 2 or 3 exceptions to that rule, and that's one of them. But for the most part, you have to play the levels in an episode in order. You can just go between episodes out of order by sequence breaking. We're going to actually do that right now, going to the next episode. But first, we're going to get another student in peril here, the one over by Hagrid's hut. We're going to get that with player 2 without bottlenecking us. Alright, so now we're on to Aguamente, which is a spell in Year 6, and this is another spell that you can get out of order. You're not supposed to be able to get this until between the 2nd and 3rd level of Year 6, but this is the only thing that happens in this lesson. So by freeze clipping into this lesson's room, we're able to access this lesson early and unlock Aguamente significantly earlier than we're supposed to. So we're going to go ahead and do that right away. So since we need Aguamente either way, we're not only going to use this to get into Year 6, but we're also going to use this to get Aguamente. So the main purpose for doing this is to get to Year 6, but we're also going to... That was a really good freeze clip. We're also going to actually complete the lesson since we need to do it either way. I should say that freeze clips are FPS dependent, and the left and right movements are RNG. How you move is kind of inconsistent. We're going to do some pixel jumps to get up here early. And really quick, we're going to free this student in peril while I'm doing this, and that'll trigger during this cutscene. Exactly what I wanted to do there. Skipping this cutscene doesn't actually save time since you have to wait for it to resolve either way. So putting that animation overlapping with the cutscene is the best way to do that. So we got up here early by skipping that book puzzle with the pixel jumps, and we're able to complete the back half of this lesson without doing the front half. The only thing we actually need to complete in this room in order to unlock the Aguamente spell is we need to put this key into the chest and free Flitwick. We skipped the cutscene, but basically during the lesson, Flitwick accidentally got locked in this chest, and a fire was started because Harry, Ron, Hermione, even though they're 6 years, or they're in Year 6, they're still not very good at magic, apparently. We're going to go ahead and exit this room. This technically isn't required, but it opens up the door, which routes out having to do another freeze clip later. So now we're in Year 6, because we clipped into Aguamente, and that's a Year 6 room. So that room doesn't have a Year 5 version, so it throws us into Year 6. So, because we haven't done anything in Year 6 yet, this door right here has an event trigger for 6-1. But we don't actually want to go to 6-1 yet. We want to use 6-1 to get out of Year 7. We want to go do 7-1 first. So I'm going to clip behind the door. And like I said, event triggers are placed and can be destroyed. So this isn't actually the normal trigger for this door. This is placed in front of the normal trigger for this door. And this clip is kind of inconsistent. It's not the greatest clip, but I basically just need to clip into the wall and hit the trigger that's behind the level event trigger here. I almost got it there. This is definitely one of the more inconsistent freeze clips in the run for me. There we go. Okay, so we got past the normal trigger there, and we hit the trigger for London here. And now we're going to go hit enter the diner, which is part of Year 7, Part 1. It's towards the beginning of the movie. Harry, Ron, and Hermione are eating at a diner, and they get attacked by some Death Eaters. So this is part of Year 7, Part 1. So now, because this is first used in Year 7, Part 1, the Enter Room Early trigger has been triggered. Now we're in Year 7, Part 1. We're going to exit through Diagon Alley again, so we don't want to fight these guys quite yet, because doing so actually causes some problems with abilities not unlocking. But now we're going to go back here again, and this door now has 3 triggers in front of it. It has the 7-1 event trigger in the front, and then right behind it is the 6-1 event trigger, and then right behind that is the normal trigger for the door. So we're going to do the 7-1 right now, because that's the one that's in front. The 7-1 is useful to do early because you unlock some abilities, actually 4 different abilities from playing this level. So the first one we unlock is Polyjuice Potion, which is what we're crafting right now. So once we create this Polyjuice Potion here, we'll unlock the ability to use free play in the hub, which is pretty useful. But first we have to actually make it. And that involves finding a bunch of ingredients. So now we have the ability to use Polyjuice Potion in the hub once we get back to the hub from this level. We don't actually have to beat the level to unlock it, we just need to finish that first room. Because the game thinks that we've learned Polyjuice because we've done that. And that's sufficient enough to be able to use it everywhere. This next room is an auto-scroller. One of the interesting things about this room is the studs you get from enemies is FPS dependent, and if you're playing with VSync off, you just get an insane amount of studs. Like, you'll see how fast I'm accumulating studs right now. This is not supposed to happen. You're supposed to, like, get maybe 70,000 from here, but by just spamming with, and hitting, you'll see I get, like, multiple strings of studs, and they interrupt each other. And when that happens, you just get, like, an insane amount of studs. So we've unlocked Polyjuice Potion in this level, and in the next room, we're going to unlock 2 other abilities. In Dumbledore's will, he gave Ron the Deluminator, and Hermione got a bag. I don't remember why she got the bag. She just had it in this year. So Ron now has the Deluminator unlocked, which is a very useful ability that has a ton of uses and is used all the time in the second half of the game. And now Hermione has her bag, which is very similarly used all the time in the back half of this game. So now that we've done that, we're going to go on to Bill Weasley's wedding, which is interrupted by Death Eaters. We're going to mostly ignore the Death Eaters, though, since all we have to do is get to the end of this and use a light a birthday cake that Bellatrix is hiding inside of. But first we have to carve a swan statue out of ice. Just normal LEGO things, of course. This is the last room of this level, so after beating this, we'll have beaten the first level of Year 5 and the first level of Year 7, without anything in between. And given that this game is not supposed to be played out of order like this, that is definitely pretty odd. But it's very cool that we're able to play it like this. The fact that you can access years early allows for a lot of broken things in this game. I'm going to drop out since there's a cutscene skip right after this level. But that is the end of that level. We've now beaten 2 levels, and we'll go ahead and move on past this. So since we're in Year 7 right now, the next thing that it wants us to do is the diner fight, where we've already entered the diner, but now the story has actually progressed to that point, so it wants us to do the diner fight now. So we'll go ahead and do that. But first, let's get this student in peril. I don't need player 2 here. But once that student peril resolves, we'll enter the diner. And this is our first little taste of the boss fights in this game, which are pretty, not exactly great gameplay. There's a lot of waiting around and dodging spells like that, you know? Very, very involved. And then waiting for them to throw things at you, and then throwing it back at them. And shooting them. And that's how most boss fights in this game work. It's a lot of just hitting. But that's okay. We're not all that mad about it. I'm gonna take this time to talk about dark magic. Hopefully I don't miss cycles to getting frozen by my teammates. So Dark Magic, like I said, it requires year 7 to be beaten, even if you already unlock a Dark Magic character before then. And that's pretty unusual, since most other games, once you unlock a character, their abilities just work. But that is not the case in this game. You have to actually beat the entirety of year 7 part 1 in order to unlock Dark Magic to actually use in the hub. So, because of that, we have to play through 6 levels, or 5 extra levels, I guess, because we'd play through 7-1 either way. We'd have to play through the other 5 levels this episode, which we otherwise wouldn't have to if it wasn't for the 4 Dark Magic students in peril in the hub that we have to rescue. But because of those 4 students in peril, we have to play an additional 5 levels. And because we're playing all these levels, we also have to unlock an additional ability in year 6 and play 2 levels in year 7 part 2, which I'm going to call year 8 from now on for simplicity's sake. So it ends up being that instead of playing like 4 levels to get all the students in peril, we have to play like 13. Which I guess adds some depth to the category. But this category could be like 45 minutes if we didn't have to play, get Dark Magic. It's just that adds a lot of extra content, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Oh, right, almost forgot to shoot him. And since we're over here, I'm going to go back into the diner and go get this student in peril here. But now we've done everything that we want to do in year 7 part 1 right now. We can't actually do the next level because we don't have the abilities we need yet. But we do have all the abilities that we wanted from this episode. So we're going to go ahead and go back to Diagon Alley. And now if you remember, I've already loaded this room in year 6. And I talked about how there was the trigger for 7-1, 6-1, and the normal trigger there. So we've already played 7-1. And entering this room in year 7 will destroy that trigger. So now the next trigger in the way is the one for 6-1. Now we're going to enter 6-1. So, this is now the first level of year 6. This game is pretty convoluted, so hopefully people are following along so far. I'm doing my best to explain how all the technical stuff works. But we're basically, the reason we wanted to get the 6-1 trigger there is because we can't beat year 7 part 1, or we can't beat 7-2 in year 7 part 1 without abilities later in the game. But having the abilities from 7-1 early is useful. So we want to play 7-1 early, but we can't get past we can't get past 7-2 without getting later abilities. And we can't get into the hub anywhere else in year 7 part 1 until we beat 7-2, because that unlocks the campsite that the characters are going to go to. And once we have that, we can get back to the hub. But so without 7-2, we would not be able to get back. That's why we set up the event trigger in the doorway of the Leaky Cauldron, so that we can escape, basically, that segment of the hub, using this event trigger to pull us back in time. I'm going to do a physics object-based skip here, where I ride the firework up top here and skip this room. And obviously, I've been doing a lot of freeze clips so far. I haven't been saying too much about it, but you can see how useful freeze clips are in this game. Like, we did 2 in the first room of this level. And we're also doing these cutscene skips all over the place. Because like I said, they're super useful. I'm gonna see if I can avoid death here. Oh, just barely. If that thing touches you, it murders you, because it's going really fast. So now we're back in year 6. We still have only done 1 level each of the first 3 episodes, but now we're back in year 6. And we're going to be in Diagon Alley for like the 5th time this run so far. And we're going to follow the normal path. And if you remember from year 5, right at the beginning, when we were following this normal path to Hogwarts, we hit a cutscene trigger that played the year 5 Grand Hall cutscene. Keep that in mind, because we're actually going to hit that trigger again, because it hasn't been destroyed yet. Because we have not entered that room again in year 5. So we have an ability to get back into year 5 from where we currently are again. But first we have another small lesson here, where we're going to learn how to use Luna's Spectrospecs. which are basically a ability that allows you to see like these invisible blocks on the ground. This is a really short lesson. I don't think this is required for any of the students in Peril, but it is part of the main story, so without beating this, you wouldn't be able to continue. And I actually forgot to do something I'd meant to do. We were supposed to do a shop trip there. It's not a big deal, we can do it later. I think. But we were supposed to do it there. Trying to think. I want to make sure I can do that later. Actually, yeah, I know how to do it. I got it. Alright, so real quick, we're gonna do a freeze clip through here, and I'm gonna trigger that since there's a student in Peril in there. And that will resolve in this room, since this room is part of the same scene as the last room. And now I was talking about this trigger in this door, right? And this trigger is actually still here. So, now we're back in year 5, because that trigger's not been destroyed yet. So, because I forgot about that thing, I'm gonna actually go back to the hub real quick, because in year 5, the trigger that exits out of the Leaky Cauldron actually takes you directly back to wherever you exited from. So that was Mundungus Fletcher. We need him for some students in Peril, since he knows Reducto, and we don't have Reducto yet when we need him. So we're going to use him to get Reducto in year 6. To get Reducto basically early, since we don't learn Reducto till after beating 3 levels in year 6, but we want him a little bit before that. So that was some bad routing I just did there because I forgot something. I was supposed to do that shop trip the first time I was there, but I just completely forgot because I was in the middle of saying something else. I'm gonna wait for this guy to resolve real quick. He is... okay, yeah. Okay. He took a while to find out where he was supposed to be. So now we're back in year 5, and when we left year 5, the last thing that we did was Thestrals, and the next thing after Thestrals is 5-2. And the trigger for 5-2 just so happens to be on the entrance of the Gryffindor common room. So since we got teleported back there, we're right next to where we actually wanted to be in year 5, which is very convenient. And I've talked before about how Lumos can cancel animations. It can also cancel the animations of giving items to people. So you're going to see that a lot in this level, since this level has a lot of items being given to people. Since the idea behind this level is we're supposed to be recruiting people to Dumbledore's army. So we're going to be interacting with a bunch of people and doing basically small quests for them so that they'll agree to join Dumbledore's army, which is the Defense Against the Dark Arts training program that Harry does in secret in year 5 because Umbridge decides to ban magic. So we're gonna go help Luna here. We helped Dean. Now we're gonna help Luna. We're gonna need to skip this cutscene she does here. Now Luna is gonna help us get to these other characters, and we're gonna have to help Neville here. And this level's kind of weird because we can freeze clip through a lot of these objects, but the level ends once you've helped all 7 students in the level. So if you don't help the students, the level never ends. So freeze clipping through all these obstacles doesn't really matter, since you need to actually play through them normally in order for the actual level to be finishable. We're going to do another Lumos animation cancel to skip the Strength Potion animation. We're going to do it again to skip the Strength Handle animation. Lumos animation canceling is pretty powerful as well. And we've helped Cho Chang by giving her some flowers. Now we're going to clip into here to get into the Hogshead hub, which we don't need to do this puzzle since that's not related directly to any person's, like, quest. So we have 3 more characters to help out here. I believe it's Ginny, Seamus, and Obarty. I don't know if it's Padma or Pavarti that we're helping out here. Oops. You'll see that Harry has an additional spell that no other character has. That's because he gets Expecto Patronum by default because he learned it in year 3. Every other character learns it later in year 5, but we don't need that for really anything, so we're not going to play far enough into year 5 to get that ability. During this hub section, I'm going to open up the library with player 2, and that's because later on in the run, you need to go into the library to get a student in peril, but it takes a little bit of time to get in here, so I'm just going to open it up while we have some downtime in this room. Since it's pretty quick to open up. And we're going to open up this main hall here so that we can have access to this room in the future. Technically, we can freeze clip past that as well, but we're going to go through that door enough times that it's not really worth it to freeze clip. This is another small freeze clip we can do here. This is the entrance to the room of requirements, but it takes a little while for it to open, so we're going to try and freeze clip into it, and we got it. If you don't land that in time, it doesn't really matter. I don't want to have Glacius equipped when I'm fighting this guy, because it'll just freeze him. This is another, so this is the dueling lesson, which is the first room of requirements lesson that we have in the game. And this is another ability that we don't actually need to beat the game, but it's part of the year 5 story, and we need to progress past this to get to the actual spell that we need. So we're just going to do a quick dueling minigame. And this is used a lot in boss fights. It's another one of the not-so-excellent boss fight mechanics in this game. I don't know if I've talked about them yet, but this game has a lot of boss fights, and they're not exactly great. They're kind of repetitive gameplay. It's definitely one of the weaker parts of the game. It's a shame there's so many of them, because it's not actually, like, that bad of an ability. Like having boss fights is not inherently bad. They're just so repetitive in this game, and that's why they kind of suck. So we're gonna go this way, and we're gonna do a little bit of a piece of tech using Lumos. So I've said that we can animation cancel, and you can actually survive death by animation canceling and falling through a hill plane. And since that part of the staircase is way at the top of the grand staircase, we can hit. We can land on the lower part and skip having to go all the way through the castle to get back to there, since the other way of getting around is kind of roundabout. So now we're in the 3rd level of Year 5, and this is the second to last part of Year 5 we need to play. Unfortunately, Snape does not have Lumos, so we need to just kind of wait for him to clip. But there's an out-of-bounds trigger in this... Okay, that did not work. In this level, and in this level only, there's an additional way to clip that's kind of funky, but basically, if you pause the game when the unfreezing animation starts... I didn't need to do it there because he just went the right direction. Like I said, those are inconsistent, but in this level only, and it only works in this level, works absolutely nowhere else in the game. If you pause the game during the unfreezing animation, it will just happen in the menu, which is cool because it's a lot harder to control that freeze clip in this level versus every other level. So it gives you a little bit of control over the end of it. This level has a lot of waiting around. It's basically, we're going through a bunch of Harry's memories, where Snape is trying to teach Harry how to defend his mind against Voldemort. So we're going to play through a bunch of sections that we've already seen elsewhere, and just basically interact with characters by giving them an item. Snape has this spell called Focus, which we're not going to learn because it takes way too long in Year 5, and it's not required to get all the students in peril. It's actually not required for any percent either. But that's the ability he has. It allows you to read someone's mind, and by doing so, you can give them an item, and then they'll complete, like, a task for you. It's actually pretty infrequently used throughout the game, but it is a spell that you learn in a lesson later in the episode, in the second interaction that Snape and Harry have regarding legilimency, which is the act of entering someone's mind or reading their mind, something like that. We're almost done with this level. It's a pretty straightforward level, except for the freeze clip in room 1. The rest of it's just casual. That's just because we found the end room trigger in room 1. Actually, I think that's the first end room trigger that we've hit. Anyone that's been watching LEGOthon so far would probably be aware there's a lot of end room triggers in LEGO games. And this game is no exception to that. There are a number of those triggers throughout the run, but we don't actually hit too many of them in the game, just because we don't really have setups for all that many, and there's not that many that would be useful either way. Alright, so we have one more lesson to play in Year 5, and then we're completely done with Year 5. We have nothing else to do. And that is the Defindo lesson that we'll do here in a second. So that's right here by Augmente, but it's in this other room. And unfortunately, we can't access this one early, like Augamente. The trigger for the room just doesn't exist, so we have to play through the episode to get to it. And this is a pretty useful ability. And there's also a student in Peril up here, so we'll get him. This lesson is pretty broken. You see that there's 3 objectives at the top of the screen, but as it turns out, it rewards you with learning the spell if you just do the 3rd one. So we can do some parkour to get up here early and skip the whole left side of this room and avoid having to do the first 2 of the 3 objectives. And then it just gives us the spell. Pretty broken lesson, pretty fun. It's kind of a fun skip getting up there early. It's similar to Augamente, where you also skip half the lesson there since you only need to do the back part of it. But now we're done with Year 5. There's nothing else in this episode we need. We don't need to come back here. You'll see that this door to Year 6 is still open, and since this trigger for this room can be reused, and we're in Year 5, it'll take us to Year 6. Now we're in Year 6 again. And we're gonna go ahead and do some weird hub movement. Because the last time we were in Year 6, we were on the path to Hogwarts, and the game is pretty confused because we did not hit the Year 6 Grand Hall cutscene trigger that is behind the Year 5 Grand Hall cutscene trigger. But after you hit that cutscene, it puts you in that room. So by just going into that room, the game thinks you've hit the cutscene, and then now we can continue onwards. So it updates the story progress, and now we have to go do a potions lesson. Oops, I did not. That was a really fortunate freeze clip. I did not set that up correctly. I thought it was on a different spell, but we just got that in one quick movement there. Alright, so now we have to do a quick potion lesson, which again, we don't actually need to get all the students in Peril, but I need to actually pay a little more attention to this. Red, green, blue, yellow. Okay, that was, I do have the memory of a goldfish. Red, green, blue, yellow is what it is. Red. Alright. Let me get this student in Peril real quick. I'm gonna go ahead and pause the game here in a second just to make sure I haven't forgotten any of them. I should be on 17. Yeah, cool. Not missed a student in Peril yet. But we're gonna do a cutscene skip here. It doesn't really save all that much time in this category. It does still save time, but basically, putting this ingredient into the cauldron completes the lesson. And by getting a gold brick right as I do that, I overlap the reward from completing the lesson, and the reward for getting a gold brick is shorter than the reward for the lesson, so I gain control earlier than I'm supposed to, and the cutscene doesn't have enough time to play before I leave the room. So it only saves a couple seconds in this category, but in normal any percent with cutscenes, or any category, it saves like 20 seconds or something. It's just that cutscene skips tend to not be as useful in these sorts of categories. And I'm going to do something similar here again. I'm going to place a character token at the exit of Dumbledore's office. I'm not going to pick it up, and I don't actually need this character. But when I leave this room, it's going to overlap the reward for this lesson, which is learning about Horcruxes with Dumbledore. So we're going through some Dumbledore's old memories where he met Tom Riddle here. This is another small lesson, and we get a reward for this that is longer than the animation of a character token. So by putting down a character token, we're going to spawn in on top of the character token when we're done with this lesson, and that'll overlap the reward. It'll save us a little bit of time. But we do have to wait for some of these things to happen. Where are their pieces? Oh my god. Those didn't spawn in, that took a while. Interesting. Usually those pieces spawn in right away, but they did not spawn in there. I'm going to do another piece of tech that I'm not using too often in the run, called gliding. You can gain extra distance from pause buffering while you jump. It's just not super consistent for me, usually, and a lot of them require decent FPS to work. So usually when I'm streaming, most of them don't work, but that one's really easy, so I'll do that one. There's a couple others in the game, but that's the only one I'm going to be worrying about. Alright, so from this point right here, if you've seen an any % run, normally what people do is they exit to the Leaky Cauldron, because the next thing we're going to is closer to the Leaky Cauldron than it is to here. But by going through the intended path, we actually pass a lot of students in Peril, and we can clean up the entire way to 6-2, which is the next thing we're doing on our way there. So we're going to do the intended path, as opposed to what is, like, because it saves a couple seconds to go the other way, but just straight by itself. But since we want to go past all these students in Peril and rescue them, this ends up being faster for this category. We're going to go head over to the greenhouse. I bet you some people that have played this game before, any %, don't even know what this room is, since you never enter it in, like, anything except for, like, in levels that complete everything, or categories that complete all the levels. But we're going to rescue another student in Peril in the greenhouse here. Wait a second for this animation to actually happen. Very slow animation, but he is on his way out. And now there's one more student in Peril right outside here. We're gonna skip another cutscene to get this one triggered. And while that's happening, I'm actually gonna switch to Mundungus with Hermione, since I need him now. So you see how he has the orange spell on his wheel, which is Reducto. Since he's an adult and adult characters get that by default, he already has that, even though we haven't learned it yet. And we need that for one of the student perils on this segment of the run here before we enter 6-2. So I'll have him do that. You'll also see that we need Ron's Deluminator here, which we'll use to get a student in peril this room. So this is why we wanted to do 7-1 early. You get this, and also for the Polyjuice Potion, so we could switch to Mundungus early. Mundungus, pretty useful here. Saves us some time and prevents us... Oh, that was not what I was supposed to do. Ah, that was actually a pretty costly mistake. Yeah, we're gonna have to backtrack a bit here. I was supposed to wait for that student in peril to resolve in the previous room. I got a little ahead of myself there. So we're gonna have to backtrack a bit. I'm gonna have to go hit the trigger in the Augmente room again, so I end up back in year 6, and then head back to where I just was. And then we'll be right back where we were. Not really that big of a deal, just a bit of walking here. This is one of the things about this game, is if you make some routing mistakes, you can end up losing a lot of time. And I'm trying to talk a decent amount, because there's a lot to talk about in this game, and I really do want to get everything properly explained, but sometimes when you're focusing a lot on what you're saying, it's easy to make a small mistake like that, which ends up being pretty costly. Now we're back in year 6, so I can go back to where I just was, and the student in peril will actually resolve now. Okay, so now he's going to resolve. And actually, I could have probably done this later. If I had realized, if I had thought at the moment that, the event trigger was still there, I probably wouldn't have done that, because I can just enter this room when I'm cleaning up the hub later, and that would have lost a lot less time than what I just did, but I wasn't thinking about that, so that's alright. Okay, so back to where we were. This is where we're supposed to be now, and we need Mundungus. I'm going to switch him to Hermione. Since we have access to free play right now in the hub, we can just switch characters as needed. And now we'll be on our way to Hogsmeade. Ooh, I need to have Glacius out. And this is one of the places where you're supposed to use the focus spell. But since we don't have that, we'll need to do a freeze clip here, which is fine. We kind of want to do that anyway. It's faster to clip into here, even if you don't have, even if you do have focus. It's just this clip can be a little bit annoying sometimes. Okay, that wasn't too bad. Alright, and now we'll get this. Student in Peril. Wait for that to resolve. Alright. And now there's one more student in Peril here, and then we've cleaned up that whole segment of the hub. So pretty much everything between the main hall and the Hogsmeade train station, all of those students in Peril have now been cleaned up. And that's kind of one of the main focuses of the routing in this category, is you want to clean up segments of the hub whenever you can. So if going through a segment of the hub just cleans it up naturally, you want to take advantage of that when you're passing through it on your first trip. That way you don't have to do it later. We have another out-of-bounds trigger that can skip this room here. And I get out. This clip is kind of finicky. It's one of the clips that actually works better with lower FPS, and I don't have low FPS. Okay, that wasn't that bad. So usually I get pretty violent animations there, and it ends up being not helpful, but sometimes it works just fine, and that one was not too bad there. So this level's kind of filler content. This is between the beginning of the Year 6 movie and when Ron's house gets attacked during Christmas. There's just a number of like random stuff that we're doing. Like we just helped Slughorn with a table. We cleaned it up for him, and now we're gonna we're helping Hermione's boyfriend guy find her as she's trying to hide from him, which is probably not a great friend move, but you know what the game wants us to do. So we'll go ahead and beat this level pretty quickly here. This is a really short level without cutscenes. And then we'll be onto the last level of this episode. And after this level, we'll have one more lesson, and then we'll be done. We won't have to do any more level or anything else in the first 2 episodes. So I'm gonna open Nocturne Alley with Ron there, since we're gonna need to go in there later for a student in Peril. And the reason I'm going this route to get to the next level is because the trigger for this level is getting onto the train at Hogsmeade, and you're really far away from there after 6-2, so it's way faster to go this way to get there, since there's just way less rooms. So this is a famous part of the run where we ride on the train to get to Hogsmeade, and then we're going to get directly back onto the train again to enter the level. Shoutouts to Double Train. And now we're in 6-3, which is the part of the movie where Bellatrix attacks the Weasley house. But first we have to clip out of that room to skip helping Mr. Weasley fight a dishwasher. And now we're gonna clip out of... Wow, that was a good clip. Now we're gonna clip out of this room to skip having to save Mr. Weasley from fire. And now we need to go fight Bellatrix. This is a pretty cool level as well. It would be really short if it wasn't for the boss fight at the end. It's just the boss fight takes a really long time. But you skip like the first 2 rooms in their entirety, and this room is really short. there isn't really all that much puzzle-wise to do. Oops. So we're gonna have Tonks and Lupin go run around this corner, and then we'll meet up with Ginny and Harry. We have a lengthy boss fight with Bellatrix here. So this boss fight has a couple of phases. So we need to kill the Death Eaters, and then Bellatrix will run around throwing about a Kadabra at us. That doesn't really bother us, because dying doesn't really matter in this game. Fun fact though, there is actually a IL exclusive time save in this part of the run, where if you use the spell Transfiguration on Bellatrix, she turns into a frog, and when she's doing the part where she's teleporting or apparating back and forth and then shooting about a Kadabra at you, she doesn't actually shoot any spells, so she just teleports back and forth as a frog. It goes a little bit faster. It saves like a second per iteration, but the problem with buying Transfig is that it's on the same slot as Freeze, so you'd have to cycle through Freeze like every time, an extra time, like every time you wanted to use it. So it would lose time overall, but it saves time in the IL. It's a pretty funny little thing. Now I'm just using Lumos to cancel the attacks from Bellatrix here, since I don't really care if I'm damaged. Doesn't really matter if I take damage or die. So I basically just want to be as close to her as possible so that I can get the item she's throwing at me as quick as possible. This should be the last phase here. So with that, that'll be the end of this level. We'll just have one more lesson due, and then we'll be done with Year 5 and Year 6. And we'll quickly be on to Year 7 Part 1, which is the bulk of the remainder of the run. So like I said, what we want to do right now is we're going, we need to get Dark Magic from Year 7 Part 1 by beating all of the episode to actually unlock the ability to use Dark Magic. But because we didn't beat this the intended way, I have to do a jump shot at this last one. Good hit there. Okay. Cool. So that unlocks Reducto. It's a really short lesson. You just have to be a little creative with that last piece up top, because we don't have the staircase that we're supposed to have built. But now that we're done with Year 6, we can just go back to Diagon Alley, because the trigger for 7-2 was loaded in when we finished the diner fight. It's in the room right after this. Now we'll warp to Year 7 Part 2, or Part 1, excuse me. Since that left off going to 7-2, it's in this room. There's just a door that opened up down here, and although there's no ghost studs leading me there, that's where the trigger for 7-2 is, and that loaded in like 20 minutes ago. But it's here now, and now we're going to use it to warp back to this episode. So now we're in Year 7 Part 2, or Part 1 again, which I'm just going to call Year 7 for simplicity's sake, since we're barely playing Part 2 anyway. So we're going to do the first bit of this casually, since we can't really freeze clip past this. But this section's pretty short, so it's not a big deal. And then we have a few freeze clips we're going to do after that. I want to make sure I have the freeze spell selected. And it's worth mentioning that after you unlock the Deluminator, which is the thing that occupies the space where Lumos used to be, but only for Ron. Ron can't really do freeze clips very well, so we don't want to really freeze clip with Ron anymore. So I'm going to use Harry as my freeze clipping dummy. We're going to clip into there and skip that first room. Then we're going to clip into here and skip this room. Maybe. There we go. Now we're going to clip into here, skip this room. This one's kind of tricky. Wall is a bit thicker since it's like elevator doors. Maybe we can get in there quickly though. There we are. Now we have a boss fight to get through here. So this is another one of those classic 5 through 7 boss fights. We have a wave of enemies to fight here. And then... what's her name? Dolores Umbridge is going to throw some objects at us. And there's a nice little thing that makes these sections easier, is if you enter the spell wheel by holding down the change character button, anything that's thrown at you, you're actually like invincible when that happens. So I don't need to worry about dodging anything or dying. I think these guys can kind of be hard since auto-targeting doesn't work super well, but targeting is pretty slow, so I'm not going to do that. I can just stand here and tank the metal objects she throws at me, so I don't need to worry about actually like moving around. As long as I don't miss a purple item. Important one. So now we have a duel to do with... I don't actually know who this character is. I know he works at the Ministry of Magic. And this is a good time to talk about dueling. So dueling works by selecting a spell on your wheel, and out of the spells I currently have access to, the only ones that will get selected are the purple spell, the red spell, the blue spell, and the orange spell. So because there's 4, it will always select one of each of the 4, and it goes clockwise. So it'll pick a random one to start, and then it'll go clockwise along those 4. But if you're hovering over the one that it's planning on picking, it skips that. Which means you can actually manipulate it to get water more often. And water's the fastest one, so you want water. The only time when that can't happen is when you start on Reducto like this one. So you see how I'm over purple, it'll skip over that one and do red. But if I'm not on blue, it'll do blue next. This is just a long explanation for like a super minor time save, but that is what speedrunning is. You can manipulate that to get good cycles. And now there's a short auto-scroller, and that's the end of this level. We're getting chased by Dementors because they found out who we were. If anyone dies and teleports in front of me, I can probably switch to them, but I think that doesn't usually happen. And they usually just fall behind, like, right away. What? Okay, that was weird. I don't know why I died there. Interesting. Dementors are really fast. Okay, so that's the end of 7-2. Now we are in a new segment of the hub we've not been to yet, called the campground. This is the area that Harry, Ron, and Hermione are running around during Year 7 Part 1. And this will be where we are for most of Year 7. I'm gonna ride the balloon with Harry. This is happening during a cutscene, so you're not supposed to be able to do that, but just a funny little thing that you can do. Alright, this next level is actually very similar to the last level. The last level, it was freeze clip, freeze clip, freeze clip, boss fight. This level is freeze clip, boss fight. So we're going to go over to the right, and we're going to hit another out of bounds trigger. This one's also really easy to hit once you get out of bounds. So far, all the ones we've hit have been like just right at ground level, really easy to hit. And that's all the ones that I'm going to hit in this run. There aren't any like launch ones that we try and hit right now, but this freeze clip can be a little bit annoying, so hopefully we get out without too much more issue. This is just a really thick wall. Getting through thick walls can be a bit harder than getting through thinner walls. We'll see. There we are. Alright, and the trigger's just right over here. Now we'll do another freeze clip to skip this room. This is another thick wall, so we'll see if we can get through this quickly here. We were like halfway through and then she came right back out. Like I said, it is random which direction you go, so you can get like halfway through a freeze clip and then pop back out. That's pretty annoying when that happens, but it does happen. That's not gonna work. It does happen sometimes. It's one of the side effects of running the game, but it is pretty cool. Alright, there we go. Alright, now we're fighting Nagini, who was disguised as a snake in, I believe this is Harry's childhood home. We have to fight the snake by throwing various objects at it. This is basically an auto-scroller as well, but there is some optimizations you can do with just being very quick with the interactions. forgot about the fourth item. We're gonna throw a teddy bear into his mouth and throw him back here. Right, on to phase 2. I'll make sure I don't get hit again, because I will die if I get hit one more time. I'm not really used to not tanking, because normally when I play this category, or this level, it's in replay story or free play, and normally I just tank hits, because it doesn't really matter when you have invincibility on, but in story, you do not have that, so it's a lot worse when you get hit by the snake. Since dying does lose a little bit of time here. We're gonna just slap the snake with a hammer after we throw a cake at its head, and then we're gonna suffocate him with a pillow. Just Lego things. Alright, and this is the last phase of this snake fight, and then we'll be on to the next level. We're almost halfway through this episode already. This episode just has levels. There's no lessons to this one. I also completely forgot I was supposed to be dodging the snake attack, so that doesn't really matter. Other than the diner fight, there really isn't any hub parts to Year 7. It's basically just the 6 levels, since you've already learned all the spells to the wheel at this point, or at least you're supposed to. So this episode doesn't really have anything between the levels other than small hub stuff that we're going to do in the forest. So that's 7-3 done. We'll go ahead on to the next level here. But we're going to do a couple of things in the hub first. I did mention that we want to get a dark magic character, and there's a very conveniently located dark magic character in the hub here. So you'll see in the background there's like a black and red bush. There's one right here as well. Every bush in this room, the token isn't interactable until you use dark magic on it, except for this one for some reason. This one works, and it's very convenient because this is also the cheapest dark magic character in the game. So one of those like inside job sort of things from TT there. It feels like could have been just a really weird, convenient thing. And also, I think Harry is slightly off the ground, so we didn't drop in there to skip that cutscene, which is kind of unfortunate. Because normally you should be able to skip that one, but looks like he's stuck. So we're not going to be able to do that. But we got the token, and we got the student Peril in the campground. And now we're on to 7-4, which has a water section. So we're going to play through a water section here at the beginning. And the camera pan cutscene skips don't really work too well in the underwater section, so I'm not going to really be able to skip any of these. There's only one I'm going to be able to skip. The other ones just don't work. We're going to have to watch through some cutscenes here, some short camera pan cutscenes. They don't really work if your characters aren't touching the ground, and I think the way this level works, because you're underwater, you're like never touching the ground. So they just don't really, characters don't really tag in very well in the underwater section. So I'm gonna get through here, drop out so I can do the one camera pan skip that actually does work. Ron gets down here. Skip this camera pan with the crab. Alright, and we're almost done with this underwater section. And we'll go on to the second half of this level. This is a pretty short level, so it's just it's just 2 rooms. We got the water section and then a fight with Tornado Voldemort. Definitely didn't happen in the movie, but that's alright. So, this part of the movie, we're trying to get the Sword of Godric Gryffindor out of the water so that we can destroy the Locket Horcrux that we got in 7-2 from Umbridge. So this will be one of the first, or not one of the first Horcruxes. This is one of the Horcruxes we destroy. I guess at this point in the story of Harry Potter, there's been a number that have already been destroyed, but I think this is the first one destroyed in this movie. We're gonna, I don't think we destroy any more in this run. I think this is the only one that we destroy in this run. Alright. Now on to this part. So I need to interact, I need to grab a couple of these these like Slytherin things so that I can make a parcel tongue interactable object work. So I'm gonna need to grab this one with Ron and the other one with Harry and bring them both to the center of the room so that... I don't really know what this is supposed to be. Like, I know this is the rock that the amulet is on. It's right there. Obviously this wasn't in the movie, but now I have to interact with this, and that spawns in Tornado Voldemort, who's the boss for this level. This episode has a lot of bosses. We'll go ahead and fight Tornado Voldemort now. Alright, and that's the sword we got out of the water. We'll use that to slap the giant tornado. And now there's some spiders, and of course Ron does not like spiders, so we're gonna have to deal with spiders here. Spiders kind of have some RNG to them. Sometimes they get stuck behind. That was actually pretty good though. Most of them came up pretty quickly. The first half of them was really fast. Alright, now we need to build this vehicle. Unfortunately, Harry kind of gets thrown back by the tornado while he's using magic on that object, so he gets pretty far away. But we'll use this vehicle to push back Ghost Harry and Ghost Hermione. If you haven't seen the movie, I'm sure this does not make a lot of sense, but this is the soul of Voldemort trying to make Harry and Ron not like each other by telling Ron that Harry and Hermione are, like, in love. Ron is not happy. Of course, that's not true. Alright, so that's the end of 7-4. So, now we're gonna get another student in peril here in a second. But first we're gonna skip a cutscene, and this bag pad gives us the apparition point for the next level. But I want to get the student in peril inside the tent first. He's just up there. So now that should have been student in peril number 24. I just want to check real quick, make sure I'm not missing any. Yep, cool. Didn't think I'd miss any, but nothing wrong with being a little careful, especially during marathons. Now, this is the entrance to 7-5, which is where we go talk to Luna Lovegood's dad. This is kind of a meme level. Has a bit of a bad rap to it. There is a segment of this level that is pretty long and does not have very many strats to it. And it gets a... oh. Why not finish that? Usually you don't need to finish that all the way for that to be interactable. Alright. But first we need to open up the door to Luna Lovegood's house, and there isn't a transition in that wall, so we need to actually do the casual way of opening it. Which is just to let go of these 3 balloons, and then build the knocker for the door. Hopefully this object likes to kind of get stuck on things, so I'm going to take it nice and slow here. Alright, good. Almost messed it up there. You can kind of bump into it and it just flies all over the place, but that one was fine. This room is super simple, we just need to get upstairs. After doing so, we can enter the next part. And this is the story of the 3 brothers here. This is kind of a parable that Mr. Lovegood told the children to explain the Deathly Hallows. And this is like a 3-minute segment of this level. Pretty long, and there really isn't too many strats here since we don't have the ability to freeze clip with any of these characters. They just have their default abilities. Well, this will be basically just playing this segment the intended way, but with some 1P2C. So, Brother 1, which is the guy jumping right now, he has the Elder Wand, which allows him to blow up these gold things, which is an ability that's only used in this level, even though the Elder Wand is present elsewhere in the game. I need to do him. This brother has the invisibility cloak, which Harry also has, because Harry inherited it from him. And the other guy has the stone that allows him to interact with his dead wife. So that is Death there. Death is trying to find us. So whenever he shows up, I need to use the invisibility cloak to get past him. The gold things I need to use Elder Wand guy to blow up. And whenever the dead wife shows up, I need to use the guy with the stone. There's a number of puzzles that we'll do here just to solve, to get by this. We're almost done with Year 7 though. We only have this level and then one more after this. And then we'll be on to the next episode. Because we do need to play a little bit of Year 8 in order to get back into the hub after beating Year 7. Year 7. Because you can't actually get back into... Oops. Oh, wait. All these guys look kind of the same. I got my characters confused there. I want to be this one. Alright. That's really unfortunate that happened. But Pumpkin's in a really bad spot there, and I couldn't interact with it. I need to throw pumpkins at the devil here. Make him go away. There we go. Alright, now I need these two characters. There is one singular strat in this segment that is different than the casual. There's one camera pan you can skip right here. Alright. The way that they designed this, it's like a little bit wider than normal 2D, and they keep putting objects like in your way. Just kind of a little bit annoying game design from the devs, but it's kind of funny, I guess. So we're almost done with this segment. There's only like 2 or 3 more puzzles for our characters to do here. Probably not going to make this cycle. No, I'll have to wait for the next cycle. A little bit too slow for that cycle there. Alright. And I want you to... Don't need the guy with the Death Stone anymore. We just need this guy for this, and then the rest of it we can do with just the guy with the wand. Further here, so I don't get killed by death. Alright. Try to go into the basement, and then go right back up some staircases to get into this house. Trying to jump up the staircase while it's being built there. Alright, and that's the end of that segment. And now we have a pretty cool skip here. Involves launching up a transition. Get up here. Skip that whole room. The way that works basically is transitions have really weird behavior, especially with VSync off. So when I hit that transition there, I just kind of get shot into the sky because like the player 2's AI like paths him into like a corner, and then oops, he gets, like, caught up and gets a bunch of vertical velocity. Pretty much the only place that piece of tech works, since there really isn't that many vertical transitions in this game. On to the last level, though. This is the level Dobby, and although it's called Dobby, we're not actually going to see Dobby at all in this level, because he only exists during the cutscene. This is also the level where Dobby dies. We're also not going to see that. Build this real quick and do a camera pan. This first room doesn't have, we don't have any abilities. We also don't have, actually, want to get to. We don't have any abilities since they took away our wand. So we pretty much just, we don't have any wands. We don't have any spells, is what I'm saying. Alright, so after we build this, I'll blow up this wall and unveil a Parseltongue door. And then we'll have a quick boss fight with the Malfoys. That'll be the end of this level. Yeah, Dobby does die this game. It's very sad. He actually gets impaled by a fish. That is the Lego canon way that he dies. Bellatrix throws him a fish at him, and the fish impales him and he dies. So we're going to do the same dueling tactics we were talking about earlier. I'm going to try and get double water in all of these, since that's the fastest spell. So we're going to skip over the ones that aren't water and just skip straight to water. Oh. I totally thought that was the last one. But there's one more. Alright. This boss fight has like 6 phases. So we do a duel, and then we do throwing objects back at Bellatrix, then we do another duel, we do more throwing objects, then we do another duel. Very excellent boss fight design in this game, as I was saying. As always, really. That is something that LEGO games tend to not be known for, their boss fights. Usually not the most interesting things. Quickly go through this duel again, and then just have a little bit more fighting with Bellatrix, and then more fighting with Malfoy and his mother, and then one more duel, and then that'll be the end of this episode, and we'll be able to move on to last episode, which I guess I'll talk about that a little bit. So the reason is, like I said, after I beat this level, Dark Magic unlocks. I almost missed that. Oh man, that would have been bad. After I beat this level, Dark Magic unlocks. And Dark Magic is something we need to get all the students in Peril, obviously. But we don't actually have access to the main castle until we beat 8-2. We have to play through the first 2 levels of the next movie just to get access to all the Dark Magic characters that we wanted, or all the Dark Magic student perils that we need to interact with. We could have gotten some other ones that we haven't gotten so far already, but it's faster to do them all at once at the end, since they're all over. The Dark Magic ones are like all over the place throughout the castle, and there's a lot of random student perils that are near them that we'd want to get when we're cleaning up the Dark Magic ones. That's why we've only gotten about, I think we've gotten 24 so far. But we still have another 14 to get, because there's 38 in total. So we'll clean up the last 14 after we're done with the next couple of levels. That's the end of year 7. We're going to do a quick shop trip to buy Snatcher, who is the the dark magic character that we picked up in the forest. So we got Snatcher. We're gonna need him to actually get the dark magic students in Peril. But first, we have the Year 8, 8-1 event trigger right here. So we'll go ahead and go into 8-1, which is the level where we go into Bellatrix's vault in Gringotts and try and get her Horcrux. We're actually not going to interact with the Horcrux whatsoever. We're going to completely skip that part of the level. Pretty cool. This level has a cool freeze clip that skips a lot of gameplay. But we do have a quick auto-scroller before then, while we ride the minecart down to Bellatrix's vault. Unfortunately, we do need to do like I don't think it's 2 laps, it's like a lap and a half. Since we start like halfway through the lap, we need to go through this whole part of the lap in order to get all of them. Then we'll backtrack a bit to get to the beginning of this. This will be the final auto-scroller of this run. Has been, I think, 4 in total. This game does have quite a few of them. So this is actually the last room of the level, but we need to go into the vault and then come back out to this room in order to actually beat the level. Since right now, everything past that fire is basically uninteractable, there's no way to really beat the back half of this room until we enter the next part of this room, because doing this is what puts the dragon to sleep. We need to actually enter this room in order to make the fire go away. So we're going to freeze clip right out of here, hit the trigger a little bit off there. There we go. So that is that trigger. Now we're back in this room, but this side of the room is now completely interactable. So we're able to do all of these pieces of the puzzle now. And the way to end this room is we need to interact with those 6 purple lollipop things on the top of the screen. So we're gonna free them from their binds and then pull them off. That frees the dragon, so we're able to escape. We skipped the whole part where we actually picked up the Horcrux. That was the whole point of going into the vault, but we didn't do that. So we do have the Horcrux, but we're not actually doing that part. So I'm going to try and do this very quickly here because we need to get rid of these 5 goblins, but getting them all in one cycle is a little bit tight. I do think we have it though, so we're good. Did get the 1 cycle goblin there, and that's the end of this level. We're now going to fly out of the vault and back towards the forest that we were in Year 7. We have one more level called Back to School, where we appropriately go back to school. And after this, we'll be back in Hogwarts, and we'll be able to actually clean up the rest of the hub. And that will be where the run ends there. So I'm just doing a quick puzzle here to actually blow up that barrier, because the that's where the apparition point is. You can kind of see the pieces of it in the barrier, or in the rock. But right up there is where we just were in the last episode. This is just an extension of that part of the hub. Now we're on to everyone's favorite level, Back to School. If you haven't seen this level before, the beginning of this level has a very annoying sound that plays. And it's gonna play here in a second, as soon as I trigger the alarm. There it is. Great sound. It will stop once I finish this room, though, and this room doesn't take too long, so... Skip this cutscene, which actually saves, like, an absurd amount of time. And that cutscene actually takes, like, 15 seconds or something to resolve. But luckily, as soon as we start triggering it, we can jump over it. That was actually a pretty good freeze clip. Alright, so now the annoying sound is done, and we can go ahead and wake up our friends in the room of requirements. The idea here is, now that we made it back to school, since we went through Hogsmeade and went through the Hogshead hub, which is actually where we went in 5-2, that room that we clipped into when we were organizing Dumbledore's army in year 5. And then that had a secret tunnel getting all the way over here. So now we have everyone. We're gonna go fight Snape, and this will be the last boss fight segment of the run. Have a quick fight with, I don't remember which Caro or Caro this is, but this is one of the Death Eater teachers that was at the school during year 7 of Harry's journey. And there is another one off to the right, but you don't have to do both of them because your NPC player will take care of the other one for you. Which is very convenient, because it would be pretty annoying if you had to do both of them at the same time with one P2C. That would be kind of difficult. But your NPC will take care of it for you, so it's not a big deal. Now we just gotta throw a couple items back at Snape, and then duel him quick, and then that will be the end. Don't actually need any of these studs, but there's some downtime. There's actually quite a few studs to pick up in this room. It's just fun to get studs, you know how it is. Alright, so there's just going to be one more item, or one more cycle here, and we got a duel, and then we will be in the post-game. This is the last level. After this, we have everything that we need. We have all the abilities, and we're able to go get everything in the hub. So we'll clean up all the rest of the student imperils right after this. Starting with the Grand Hall, since we're in the Grand Hall right now, in the level. So after this level we get put right in front of the Grand Hall. So we're going to start with that one. Alright. We do need to use Polyjuice to get the Dark Magic character Snatcher that we bought. So we're going to do that in this room as well. Luckily there's a Polyjuice potion like right here. First, let's go get this object. The student in peril is hiding behind that metal object in the back of the room. So that'll resolve here in a second. While Hermione drinks the potion. Right, that's a student in peril. And now we want to get this one. Now there's another one over in the Weasley Boxes area that we entered earlier in the run. Go. It's actually in the storage room at the end of this room. And then we're going to go clean up the classrooms after this. There is a little bit of interesting routing with this part of the run. It's mostly just trying to get through the Hogwarts castle as quickly as possible, but there is a couple of ways we can kind of backtrack on ourselves to save some time. The hub does kind of loop in on itself, which allows multiple paths to get to one place or another. So that is number 27 there. Yep, cool. Just want to make sure we hadn't missed one yet. We should be good to go then, as long as I just follow my splits here. Didn't think I was going to miss any, but you can never be too careful. So, we're at 27 out of 38. We need Hermione for the next one. We're going to the library, which we opened in year 5. And there is one in here. There is pretty much a student in peril in like every room of the castle, which is cool because you get to see a lot of. Oh, that's not the cutscene. You get to see a lot of the parts of Hub that you usually don't see in like any percent. So we get to go to all these off rooms. We do actually enter this room in any percent, but we don't really go very far into it. That is the end of the library. Now we're going to go clean out some classroom student imperils. We already got the one in the potion room, the defense against the dark arts room, and the 2 classrooms on the left. But we still need to get this one. Maybe get this in time. Excellent. Barely got that in time. You want to get that while you're waiting here, if you can. Alright. Now, we're gonna start the animation for the bag, which will just keep going while we're off in this room. We're gonna get the divination student in peril here. Now we're gonna get this one as well, while we open the astronomy room. We'll wait a second for that to resolve. There's a whole bunch of them over on this side. There's like 4 over by here. And we have 1 here in the astronomy tower. And after this, we're actually going to exit back to the hub, since we've gone so far into the castle here, and we don't really have anywhere near where we are right now. This guy's stuck in a trap door. I'm going to see if I can get the launch. You can kind of launch out of here during the animation. No launch. Oh, okay. Baby launch. Alright, so now we're going to exit Diagon Alley. There is 1 more that I need to go get going this way, and then we're going to go through Nocturne Alley to get the other one. There is one on the Hogwarts, Hogwarts train station, which we could have gotten earlier. We could have interacted with the pad earlier, because we had every ability that we needed. But you need to do this student in peril in year 8, because the code to actually spawn in the student in peril only exists in the year 8 version of this room. So even though we had the abilities earlier, we couldn't do it, otherwise it would soft lock. So we need to go and do it right now. He's off on the right side of this room. Okay, well, I'm having a bit of trouble here. Okay, there we go. It's kind of annoying because these flower pot things spawn in like on top of bag pads in a couple of places, and they're pretty hard to interact with when there's a bunch of stuff on top of them. I don't know how this guy got stuck inside of this train box, but he did. He was just folded up inside of there. Alright, so we haven't actually done too many of the dark magic ones yet. We're going to exit back to Diagon Alley because we want to go down Nocturne Alley now. And this one will resolve while we're in here. And now we use the Vanishing Cabinet to get back into Hogwarts. Since that takes us right here. That's a really cool fast travel-esque kind of thing in this room. We're gonna go back over here. Alright, and we have to get this one here, and then we have one more dark magic one in Ravenclaw. Green, blue, yellow, red. Yellow, red. Alright, that'll take us into the Ravenclaw common room. This is another dark magic. Student in peril here. Now we have just 2 more, and then that'll be the end. have one on the grand staircase and then one down by the lake. Time will end once I rescue the last student in peril, which will be pretty soon here. Got one more in this room. I shot the lock off of him earlier, but hadn't actually rescued him yet until now. Right, that's number 37. Everyone in the castle is really scared because there's like a Death Eater invasion happening right now, but I'm just trying to help some students get unstuck out of cabinets and stuff. Alright. One more down here that requires dark magic, which is why we didn't get it when we were here last time. Then we will be done with the category, and that'll be the end of this run. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. It is actually a pretty cool category. I don't know if I've mentioned this yet. I don't think I have, but I actually learned this run specifically for LEGOthon. I wanted to do something different. I had done most of like my main categories in years past, and I wanted to try something brand new that definitely hadn't been shown at LEGOthon yet. So I just kind of picked out a random category extension for 5 through 7 because I like 5 through 7. And it is actually a pretty cool run. A lot of cool routing, pretty interesting stuff. So for some reason when you enter this room it plays the student in peril rescue sound even though you haven't rescued him yet. But time will end right when I interact with this bush at the bottom of the staircase. So about 5 or 10 seconds from now it'll be right here on the right. And time. Alright. So that is all Hogwarts Student in Peril. We have rescued all 38. I hope you guys learned a little bit about the game. It is a very cool game, 5 through 7. Pretty broken, lots of cool tech in this game. Thank you guys so much. Yeah, that'll do it for me. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of the runs today. We definitely have a couple really cool ones still yet to go. So stick around for those, and have a good night, guys.